Well, every school day, thousands of Michigan children rely on school buses, and there are strict laws designed to keep them safe. Today, we're breaking down what drivers need to know with attorney Tom Sinus from the Sinus Dramus Law Firm. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So let's talk about first the basic rules that we all should know when we're driving around school buses.
Yeah, some of this we think we know because we intuit, and maybe we're correct, but let's just review exactly what the law says. And I'm going to read this. It's just one sentence. The operator of a vehicle overtaking or meeting a school bus that has stopped and is displaying two alternately flashing red lights located at the same level shall bring the vehicle to a full stop, not less than 20 feet from the school bus, and shall not proceed until the school bus resumes motion or the visual signals are no longer actuated. So there you have it. If you're encountering a school bus, whether you're behind it or you're approaching it from the other direction, and it has two alternating flashing red lights, it doesn't matter whether it has the stop sign that pops out or not, you have to bring your vehicle to a full stop. You can't be any closer than 20 feet, and you cannot move until the bus starts moving or until those flashing lights are no longer displayed. The only exception to this is if you are encountering a school bus coming from the other direction and you and the school bus have a divider that the law calls an intervening space or a physical barrier that is clearly dividing the two sections. In that scenario, of course, you are not required to follow the rule I just mentioned, but you are if you are approaching that bus from the opposite direction and you're on a typical residential street or a road that doesn't have that physical barrier. Of course, how so many people are encountering school buses because they're in our residential neighborhoods.
Absolutely. And you know, we've been hearing more and more about this recently. A lot of those buses, they have cameras now, so you can get caught if you are not obeying these laws. So how can that happen? What happens if you don't do this and you get caught?
It's a great question. You may see it. I've seen it, emails from schools reminding people that the school buses in their district may have these cameras. Where does that come from? Well, a few years ago, the legislature passed a law that authorizes school districts to use these, what they call stop arm cameras. And these really are just what you would commonly think of as a camera on the bus. And it might surprise you that many buses didn't have these cameras, but they did not. And so this law authorizes the use of these cameras, but it also authorizes the admissibility of that videotaped evidence in a case against the driver who violates one of these laws. Because, of course, if you violate one of these laws, you may be subject to prosecution. And the law that authorized the use of these stop arm cameras by districts also made it clear that this video evidence was admissible in a case against the driver, which maybe you would think would be obvious, but sometimes the question of admissibility when it comes to legal cases is more complicated, and this makes it very simple. The other thing that the statute makes clear is that if the violation is proven, there is a presumption that the owner of the vehicle is liable, meaning there's a presumption that it is the owner who was driving the vehicle. So if in fact you weren't driving the vehicle when a violation occurred, then you as the owner need to rebut the presumption that it wasn't you. All of which is to say, this is designed to make it easier and more streamlined of a way to prosecute these offenses.
Wow, yeah, absolutely. So should you be prosecuted for something? What kind of penalties do drivers face for violating these laws?
Great question. Well, it depends, of course, on what happens. If you violate one of these laws and heaven forbid something terrible happens, then the scope of liability, of course, can increase. A violation of the law just by itself is deemed what we call a civil infraction. Some people would call that a ticket. But if the violation of the law occurs and someone is injured or heaven forbid killed, then the criminal penalties can increase. The other thing, of course, that can happen is civil liability. I think it's easy to forget that when one terrible event happens, there are often two events, two resulting cases, a criminal case and a civil case, and this can happen here. You can be prosecuted criminally, but you also can be held civilly responsible. And in our legal system in the state of Michigan, we acknowledge that if it can be shown that you violated a statute, like the one we just talked about, then that is evidence and quite strong evidence of your negligence. So, of course, nobody wants to be on the wrong side of something like this happening, especially because so often the injuries that occur when these laws are violated are injuries to children. And all of this is just a reminder for us to, as the law says, stop.
Yeah, I mean, and is that your takeaway? I would obviously no one wants to hurt a child, but a lot of times we're in a hurry. A lot of times, if you feel like you need to get to where you need to go, what's your lasting words for drivers out there when dealing with school buses?
You can never be too careful around a school bus. So don't assume anything. Assume that the requirement is upon you to stop until it's established otherwise, because this is not the area where anybody wants to cut a corner.
Absolutely. Well, Tom, thank you so much for all that insight. We really, really appreciate it. And of course, if you have questions, legal questions about just about anything, you can get a hold of Sinus Dramus, sinusdramus.com, or you can give them a call, 616-301-3333. We'll be right back.